On this episode of Carnage, we're preparing Dad's ute for an epic road trip. For those of you just joining us, this is Dad's ute. Now, Dad passed away to cancer about 10 years ago, but he left me this 1968 VE Valiant ute. Now, when I got the ute, it had a slant 6 and a manual in it, but Dad always talked about putting a V8 in this thing. So it's about 12 months ago, I decided to put a 318 V8 in it and take it to Mopar Sunday in Queensland. But COVID killed any chance of that. We got locked out of the state, we couldn't make the trip, but to be honest, we'd been a little bit too ambitious. We'd given ourselves 5 weeks to get the ute ready, but when we started doing work on the ute, we found rust and cracks in the chassis rail and all sorts of stuff. And instead of 5 weeks, it probably took us about 5 months to get the whole thing done and dusted. But now, it's registered, it's on Club Rego, and next week, I am taking it to Queensland and we're gonna race at Mopar Sunday. So here's the engine in all its glory. 5.2 litres of Chrysler's finest. So it's got Edelbrock heads, intake, carby, it's got one of their cams. It's basically an Edelbrock top-end power package. It made about 270 horsepower at the tyres, which doesn't sound a lot. It ran 13.9 down the quarter at 107 mile an hour or thereabouts. So it actually gets going, but the converter and gears hold it back. Now, unfortunately, I haven't been able to swap the converter and gears yet. I've been a little bit busy doing other projects. So we're going to take it up with the same converters and gears that we ran at Heathcote Park with, but we're going to have drag radials on the back, our fitted a tacho, and yeah, I think if we go up all that way, run a PB and make it back, we'll call that a win. And before I forget, check out this cool little thing I just fitted. It's a VPW carby latch. How quick and easy is that? It's basically a bonnet latch that fits to the middle of your carby and allows you to pull it off and fit it within seconds. That's one of the coolest new products I've seen in a long time. So as I mentioned before, one of the things I have done is installed this little auto gauge tacho. Last time we raced it, I had no idea where I was revving it to and shifting at. It was all by feel. And I'm feeling that when we race it with an actual tacho and some proper information, I'll be able to get some better times out of it. Unfortunately, these things never came with a tacho from factory. In fact, the first Valiant that came with a tacho, I think, was the VF Pacer in 1969, and that sat up here on the gauge as like a little horizontal bar thing. But yeah, kind of cool for the time, but yeah, these things never got them. Something else I've also installed is a little switch down here on the shifter. So that activates our lock-up converter. So out on the highway, I can lock up the converter and drop our RPM on the long trip and hopefully get some decent fuel economy out of this thing. With the price of fuel these days, this is going to be an expensive trip. Obviously that lock-up converter is going to help bring the RPM down, but even with that activated, right now we're about 2,800 RPM at 100 k's an hour. So something else we've done is bought these 15-inch steelies, put 225 75 series tyres on them. They are 28.3 inches tall, so they are big mothers. And with these on the car and the lock-up activated, we're hoping that'll bring the RPMs down under 2.5 grand at 100 k's an hour. So yeah, that'll be pretty cool. Obviously we're not going to race with these. Right now I'm getting drag radials fitted to another set of 15-inch steelies. So we're going to have drag radials on the car. So drag radials with a tacho, I think we can run a PB up there in Queensland. So before we hit the road, I've already changed the thermostat to one that I think will suit the engine a bit better. And we'll whack a new filter on there, drop the oil, put some fresh fluid in there. And yeah, we should be ready for a big long road trip. This engine's still pretty fresh, so this road trip should run it in a little bit more. Like when we raced it at Heathcote, it was still tight. So hopefully this will help loosen things up a little bit as well and yeah, free up some horsepower. Before we change the oil, we've got to warm it up a bit. It's always easier to drain warm oil than it is cold. Bit of classic shifter action. Right, so we've checked our fluids. We've got our tonneau cover out in the sun heating up so it can stretch out to its full size. I can't find my proper hood bow here for the tonneau, but I made this one up, just bought some steel from Bunnings and put some squares on the ends and gave it a nice little bend. It's come up all right. Last thing we've got to do is actually, it has a slight leak that comes when it rains around the wiper arms where the pivots go down. So I've got these gaskets here from the guys at Elco, and yeah, I'm gonna have to get up under the dash, replace those gaskets. But just looking at how hard that is to do, and I really think it's going to be a lot easier if I spend 2 minutes pulling the seat out. Yep, seat's coming out. So pulling the seat out seems like a pretty drastic thing, but realistically it's 4 nuts and lift the seat out, which gives me a lot more room to operate. Otherwise I'm going to have to cramp myself up under the dash somehow, and it's just going to extend the job. So spend a couple minutes pulling a seat out can save you, you know, half an hour of pain. And after all that, I just found the bow for the tonneau cover. That's hilarious. I knew I had the bloody thing somewhere. Alright, so that gasket wasn't too flash, but that wasn't the side that was really leaking. I might as well do both. The joint, the gasket, not so good. Okay. Oh. Well, that is not my definition of fun, but it's done, and hopefully I won't end up with a wet foot anymore. So it's been a while since the tonneau cover's been on, so what I've done is I've poured some hot water on it to try and soften it a bit, allow us to stretch it so I can get over all these tabs. It's getting there. It's certainly closer than it was when it was cold. Now the weight of the water's fighting against me. So it looks like we're going to have to admit defeat on this tonneau cover situation. We are getting it to soften up using hot water, but the stitching's so old that it just keeps tearing the stitching every time we try and pull it. Yeah, it's just so old. We need another one, but we're not going to have time to get one made before the trip, so I'm going to have to do some creative tarping, I think. Oh well, we'll pull this back off. We'll start packing things up with a tarp and tie it in that way. It's a bit of a bummer, but it is what it is. Yeah, we'll see how we go with that. Well, it is time to start packing the ute, and these are going in the back. So I've got 235 drag radials. These are the ones that were on the VN. I just borrowed them off that. So we don't expect that we'll be wheel spinning too much, but yeah, no wheel spin is better than wheel spin. So yeah, and then obviously I just bought another set of 15 by 7s, and they fit perfectly within the guards. So yeah, we should have some traction. Right, well, we're all packed up and ready to go. So I'm going to take the ute home tonight, and then I'm going to drive out to meet the boys first thing in the morning, and we're going to head away on our 1800k minimum each way road trip. So it's 1800k minimum just to get up there, and then we've got to get back. But it's going to be epic, and you're going to see it all on a future episode of Carnage.